So this is it. This is my shot. This is what I'd be presenting as final. And just to explain a little bit about that process, a company like MPC, as an artist, you're going to regular dailies, so maybe every couple of days, where you sit with your colleagues and a visual effects supervisor reviews your work. Usually have a production assistant taking notes down, and then those notes get given to you as feedback to address. Usually at the early stage of a shot, that's all internal, so you kind of trying to sort of see the direction of maybe all the shots of a sequence. But then further down the line, they'll be sort of presented to the client, and then notes will come from them which the artist will address, and the process kind of continues like that until shots are finalled. It can be very iterative on a big show. Maybe a complex shot, you can have versions that are in the 30s, 40s is fairly sort of common on sort of big projects. We've got 6 versions here, and it might be worth showing you through those just to see how the thing has kind of developed. So we'll go back to the beginning, and our original slap comp that we talked about and looked go something like that. So still quite a lot of work to be done, and like I said, this is just bolting things together really, and it's then after this that the fun begins. And we'll look at this in Nuke. We'll look at all the colour correction work that goes in, and things like dealing with like light around the edges, and it's really working with an absolute knowledge of photography. You have to hold sort of dear things, knowledge and understanding of exposures and what lenses do to an image. Color temperature, depth of field. It's like all the things that come from a lens and the camera, especially as a compositor, you're kind of putting back and tuning an image to sort of look that way, because that's what this work is really all about. So what I did with this was sort of invite a critical friend to look at the work, and my friend, director of photography Steele Williams, looked at these shots. And it's great if you can to get a critical friend like that involved. Directors of photography that you know, even if they're not directly on the project and you're not collaborating with them, they're not the filmmaker or part of the production. It's just good to get that other pair of eyes, and cinematographers are great. So they'll really sort of maybe help and refine things. So that's where I started, and then version 2 looked like that. So I've dropped the exposure in the back a bit, and also the saturation. And we'll get more into the discussion of exposure in a bit. Version 3 is looking a little bit more like, I think in the right direction. The biggest issue really with this is that if you're trying to say that, detail can be seen in the trees and the clouds in the sky, as we said, this is, I think, quite late in the afternoon, sort of getting towards twilight. But, so colour temperature wise, quite sort of blue light, probably sort of 6,000, 7,000 degrees Kelvin. You can get into all of that, but just in terms of sort of brightness, if we can see detail here, then he's going to be pretty dark. He has to be, because that's how exposure in photography works. So version 4, we've taken him down darker a little bit more. Still a little odd though, we think, that this interior is bright. Why would that be? Because there's no light source down here lighting up that interior. And also the outside of the car is sort of too bright, just doesn't work. So we looked at that, and we took those things down. Look, in version 5. In fact, I think we're nearly there. Also, there's been work put into this sort of edge, getting it to just doesn't sit. Look, with that bright edge there. We've talked about this in despill, and I think this was added in as part of the despill process, but that needs to look more even, and I guess more on its way to being a silhouette against that brighter background. So we've done that, and then getting there. But we thought, or I thought actually, that this is too static. So there needs to be like that little bit of car movement as it's driving along the road put in. Easy to make this too much, and then it just looks kind of ridiculous, but with a little bit of sort of animation, or we've used a camera shake operator, I think, it gives us that look. So it just sort of adds that little bit believability at the end. The other thing that we've done is put in light wrap, and this is another popular sort of finishing touch to comp. It can be overdone, so we'll look at that. But there you have it. That's sort of how the West was won in terms of this shot in a feature film sort of pipeline, feature film way of working. So we'll look at Nuke next.